Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success, a change conversation for leaders, project and change practitioners for today and tomorrow. My name is Reprioritise of myvirtualchangemanager.com, and I'm an experienced change and project professional and people leader with many years of experience in the industry. I love business, and I love the people side of business especially. So nothing lights me up more than seeing people use change management, project management, and strong change leadership to engage, motivate, and inspire people, and ultimately transform organisations. If you've heard about change management and have no idea of what it involves, then you're in the right place. If you know about change management, but you want to take your practices to the next level, then this is where you should be. I'm going to share the stories of my experiences, interview some fantastic people, and I'm going to explore all of the challenges and opportunities that you face in organisations right now. So please join me and let's go and have some fun. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Reprioritise and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. Today we're going to talk about how do you know when you're doing too much change. There's this conversation in organisations about change capacity, but the reason why I wanted to talk about this now is because you're going to see one of the signs, and there are signs that are evident across an organisation which is doing too much, an organisation which is trying to change too much. And definitely this time of year you're going to see one of the signs, which is your people are tired. Now, being tired at this end of the year is a common thing anyway, because it's the end of a calendar year psychologically, because we think, it's holiday season, and part of it is where people start to decompress and also have one last push to the end of the year to deliver things. November's the month of, if you deliver now, then you can embed a little bit towards Christmas. And as most organisations have the notion that delivery is an indicator of success, then they want to get things delivered in November so that it can be embedded through December. The worst thing you can do is try and deliver something in December when people are going on holidays and you're going to struggle to implement. And I have seen the error of ways when go lives are still pushed through, and January becomes just the biggest cleanup month. So I would definitely say if you're looking to introduce change, if you go past more than likely probably the 1st of December around that time, then it's too late and you're going to pay a price for that. It's going to be hard to embed, and it's going to be hard to maintain momentum because people are psychologically winding down. They don't want one last push. While most people and leaders want to do one last push, most people are tired at the end of the year. And certainly post-COVID times, I think that fatigue becomes even more prevalent, and people are becoming more aware of the fatigue of their people at this time of year. So there is one indicator, is fatigue in your workforce. It's not necessarily, even if you have really good change practices within an organisation, you still find that whilst your people can receive the change, eventually people just want a bit of stability. They want a bit of a breath, a bit of a breather space as such in life and in organisations. So what are the other signs? Because there's common conversation around this of trying to do too much. And they look at, this is coming up as a recurring theme. What can we do to solve it? Versus actually, perhaps we should look at our prioritisation. And maybe we should just stop or pause some things so that others get delivered, that we pace it in and we don't overload everyone. So one of the indicators, and this is a really interesting problem, because this indicator, when I talk about this sign, I'm going to dedicate an episode particularly to this, around how to unpack and resolve the issue around SMEs being overloaded. So a SME being a subject matter expert for if you're not working in projects or programs. But the typical behaviour is that there's 1, 2, maybe 3 people within a team who are constantly engaged on something. So they're always the person who projects go and talk to. They're the person who knows the processes, who knows what's happening, almost like the trusted advisor for that particular business area. And one of those recurring issues that gets raised is and requested by leadership, is to get a view on if we're overloading certain individuals in the organisation, because people will hear it from their line manager, and people being executives will hear it through their leadership chain. So-and-so is doing too much. Everyone's wanting to engage with this person, and they also have their business as usual job. So there's a couple of things, and this is why I want to dedicate an episode to this, because it is really quite key to unpack it. And I've seen time and time again where it hasn't been successful around how to heat map where a particular team or a particular individual is constantly asked for advice or is working on things. And let's be clear, sometimes I guess that individual may revel in that sense of significance to be the expert, and there might be a bit of an issue around a single point dependency within a team that is a contributing factor to the fact that everyone has to go to this individual. So there's a couple of ways in which to approach it. However, coming back to the origin of this conversation, that's a sign that you're potentially doing too much. So it'll either be that there's the same SMEs and they're being overloaded. They don't have enough time to participate in everything, and it's slowing down projects and programs. Definitely. What you're looking at then is having a look at how much activity is happening where there's a dependency on that person, and then list out those 5 projects. Take that to your governance forum, to your leadership team, and say, here's 5 programs which depend on the same person, and they're starting to slow down because this person doesn't have the time. We want you just to prioritise the 5 and put the others on pause, because else you're just wasting money. And really that's a key thing around some of this stuff around if you're doing too much change. Another sign is going to be there will be delays in delivery. So your schedule, potentially even your scope, things start slowing down and your resourcing starting to flag. And resourcing because of those dependency on the SMEs, or that we don't have the right experts to come in and keep pushing this piece of work along, is, are we doing too much? And do we need to actually go back to the drawing board and pause some of the key programs in the portfolio? The better you get at planning and managing and visiting that and keeping on top of that every month will determine how efficient your portfolio delivery is. Then also in the back end of that, if delivery has happened and you're really struggling to embed, or even as you're getting towards a delivery phase and people aren't attending training, or leaders aren't across the program as well as they should be because it's a peak period within the business cycle, then you're going to find it struggling. You're going to find the delivery struggling. You're going to find embedding struggling, and your embedding tail is going to take longer. Or if you don't actually compensate in relation to making that embedment longer, you're never going to achieve the benefits and the outcomes that you wanted initially. So once again, you take another hit around efficiency. And then soon there'll be another change that goes in and is deployed, and it's a compounding effect. So a compounding effect of inefficiency and wastage. So if you're doing too much, one of the indicators you're going to see is your schedule is going to start slowing up, and the link through to availability of either leadership or SMEs. And this really has to do with how you're running your program and portfolio of work, and whether you're taking those factors into account to have the right ebbs and flows and not overload your resource requirement at different times. I mentioned about benefits not being realized because, as you go through, you might deliver. Sure, you might find that you're delivering something, but if your consultation and your engagement isn't consistent throughout the whole program, you can deliver, like oftentimes in IT space, the progress will still continue. They'll just keep delivering to their timelines. Use the old adage of, if you haven't had time to review this, then we'll take it as approved, which always really annoys me. So, and that's just a technique that people have used over time just to keep progress and momentum happening. The problem with that is by taking that tact of, if you don't respond by X date, we'll consider it approved, sooner or later that'll bite you in the backside, because you will find that you have gone and deployed something that's not fit for purpose. And because the subject matter expert or the leader in that area might have been very annoyed at feeling pressured to move something forward in an unreasonable time. And I think that's the key thing on if you've already got resource issues, if you know that everyone's struggling, taking that approach is a little bit, dare I say, disrespectful or rude, when the reality is you should give people 2 weeks to review something if you're in that space versus a couple of days or even a week. You should meet with them, or at least put the opportunity on the table if you'd like to discuss this further, if you want us to step you through it. There's no excuse for not going the extra mile to engage your stakeholders to get a review to happen. Else you're going to find that the biggest risk you hold is that people haven't reviewed things, haven't had the time, haven't been engaged on it, and then halt the program closer to go live because they simply weren't engaged appropriately. So just know that that's not really a solution, kind of saying, I'll take it as approved if you don't get back to me. The next step you take is, can you review this? Set up some time, I'll step you through it. And once they're engaged, if you get the sense that actually there's a lot of changes to this that they're going to want to make, then you take that path and make sure that they're engaged, because else you're going to have to do rework on the back end. So definitely this is why those indicators and these signs are really, really key when looking at how you're managing stakeholders or how you're managing momentum. But if you're doing too much across the organisation, or if it's a cyclical peak period of time, at times towards the end of the year for retail, for hospitality, for some of those industries, this is a peak period, the festive period. And so you really don't want to be introducing too much change, trying to engage too much, so that the focus can be on business and making the most of this peak period as an income generator for the organisation. The next thing, so a lot in these conversations for next level change success, I talk about a program related environment. And what that means is if you've got business as usual, and I do contest that there's no such thing as business as usual, that organisations are always having to evolve and move forward, then if you don't, though, have the little projects that are going across, whether across the organisation and across departments, those little projects that are happening, if you don't have those outlined, if you don't have them visible, and if you're not actively managing or knowing who's working on what, you're not pulling the lever of efficiency in your organisation. So the first step, and I've had this in smaller organisations, this is quite typical, is that there's little projects happening, but there's not one master plan that actually covers across the organisation the activities happening. The benefit of that first step on capturing that portfolio of work is to identify where there's duplication, identify where there's linkages to different projects or programs and where change is happening, and then you have it having to backtrack on that change because of a change happening in another team. So there could be all of this frustration taking place in the organisation, which is causing unnecessary tension because you haven't got the discipline or the frameworks in place from a program or project perspective. So signs that you're doing too much will be there's conflict across the organisation, there's been rework that's happening, and sometimes that's just a sign of not even knowing what's on the agenda across the organisation. And making sure that as a leadership team, there's discussion, decision, prioritisation, and a bit of what we call a backlog, which is we've got projects that are live, and there's always more things that you want to do than either you can afford to do or that we have the time and resource for. And so that becomes almost a parking bay. And it waits until something's delivered, embedded, benefits are tracked and reported on. That's ideal state. And then you bring the next project on and say, okay, well, now we're ready to do this. So the doing too much, who pays the price for doing too much? Well, your bottom line pays the price because you will be delivering inefficiently. You won't be realizing the benefits of the investments that you make. And so if you're spending $250,000, for example, even on a piece of technology or a simple platform for your organization, your company, and know that it could be up towards millions, if you do not know what you're managing, you are wasting money if you're not actively managing that portfolio of work. The other people, of course, who pay the price are your team members. Team members and leaders. There'll be unnecessary conflict, unnecessary stress. There will be stressful conversations happening with each other because no one's actively managing the pressure put on individuals such as subject matter experts who know what they're doing. There won't be any account or any factoring in of the pressure that they're under because they're constantly being asked for things, maybe even asked for the same things by different people, and you will lose talent. And if there is a situation where you've created a single point of dependency with that individual and then they leave because they're tired, they're stressed, no one's helping them, there's no support for them, and if their direct leader hasn't managed that dependency on that one person and made sure that there's knowledge sharing, knowledge distribution, which even as a tactic, if that person was supported and made sure that there were other people who were taking on parts of their role or getting across their role, then that also would enable more things to take place. And then what you're having to do is just change control. But coming back to that individual, more than likely you lose that talent and then you're in a whole world of pain. So by not addressing that subject matter expert dependency and the doing too much by actually pacing in projects or programs better and only kind of doing one or two things at a time and then allowing them to focus on business as usual to also embed the changes that they're introducing, then you're going to come really unstuck in the future when that person departs the organisation. And they will, because they'll be tired. And other people will see that there's an opportunity to have the person come across where someone can support them better. So there's many prices to be paid when you're doing too much in an organisation. So give some thought about that. If you're finding that these situations are occurring in your organisation, then the things to look at, get an enterprise portfolio outlined, have that prioritisation discussion with the leaders, highlight where there might be a single point dependency and where there might be overload for individuals, and then also make sure that you're constantly monitoring the sentiment and engagement in your organisation with your team members. So they're just some of the signs. If you're doing too much, it's relevant at this time of year. When you head into December and January, typically these are reflection months. They're times where you have those, let's have a look at the year that we've had. Let's look at what we want to create this year. They're great conversations to have in December and January with care and with acknowledgement and celebration for the achievements throughout the year. Because certainly if you're like me, you get to the end of the year, you can't even remember January and what's taken place or the things that you've done, but you kind of know you've done a lot. And so it is also worth celebrating at this time of year and letting that be more and more integrated into the rhythm throughout the year. So there's achievements, celebration, acknowledgement that happens throughout the year. It will help build resilience from a change perspective if it's enjoyable. And that's quite important as well. I hope you found this episode informative. I hope it's given you some hints and tips and things that you might want to look at within your own business context. Come across to myvirtualchangemanager.com, sign up for our newsletter. There are webinars happening in 2025. There are workshops I'm going to be holding around change impact assessments, how to build your enterprise portfolio view, stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement. Come along, sign up for the series, and just remember that change matters because your people matter. Have a great day.